All right, welcome back to the Krueg Show, everybody. Hope everybody's having a great Friday. We're talking a lot of Niners today. We got Kyle Posey in the house, our Niners Nation edition of the Krueg Show. What's going on, Kyle?
Nothing, man. Just been melting outside in these 7-on-7s this week, so I'm sure you know how that goes. Yeah, man. A lot of sun out here. We're getting triple digits in Phoenix. It's 112 degrees. How's life, man?
Well, it's funny. I was at minicamp in Santa Clara the other day. The Examiner gave me the credential. I was down there covering it. And, it was really a great, experience being down at minicamp and being out there on the field again. One of the things that you see, I thought at minicamp, is you see a lot of the players wearing heavy sweats because they're trying, and it was a pretty warm day in Santa Clara, but a lot of them, are training in warmer climates than the Bay Area right now, and they want to get that good sweat in and maybe burn off a couple pounds as well, because they're kind of shaking the rust out in minicamp, and so they're all kind of heavy sweatshirts and that kind of thing to try to kind of work it out. So I thought it was interesting watching minicamp and the different approaches to get ready for training camp, which is about a month away.
This isn't Niners, but it's Bay Area. Did you see Najee Harris weighs 244 pounds?
I did see that. And Doug Hendrickson, his agent's my buddy. I was going to text him on that. 244 pounds. Now, I got to think, Kyle, he's on his way towards like 238. I got to think, right?
With a guy like that, it's probably pretty easy for his weight to fluctuate. So I imagine he can lose 7 pretty easily. But just thinking about that, in 2022, a running back who essentially they're revolving their offense around is 244.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Big boy for sure. Let's talk running backs, because you have the cover story on Niners Nation right now, and it's an interview with Krueg Show, and people should go to it right now. Krueg Show on Ty Davis Price. I was blown away by this kid. Cosell believes TDP could play a lot as a rookie. Kyle, he's got the endorsement now of the great Krueg Show. Tell us, for people who didn't catch it yet, how the conversation went with Krueg and what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, he is if you don't know Krueg Show, he's been around probably for like 30, 40 years, scouting all these players. He has scouting reports going back to the 90s. So you can, if you want to know about Cassell, just Google him and a player, and I'm sure you'll find out. But he's talking about that he's reviewing the NFC West, and a player that he likes is Ty Davis Price, which for a lot of us, if you weren't really heavily involved in just watching players throughout the draft, you probably haven't heard of Ty Davis Price. And even though he comes from LSU, they had a down year. They had some scandals going on off the field. So LSU was kind of out of the limelight. So for him to co-sign Ty Davis Price, that's a good sign, just because he watches everybody. He watches every running back possible. And it sounded like Cassell wasn't surprised that the 49ers took a running back in the third round, and by a running back, I mean Ty Davis Price. So I think it sounds like Cassell is high on him because of all the things you would imagine. So he has the explosion, he has the power. He pointed out his acceleration, which I think is a big factor when you're talking about a Kyle Shanahan offense, because top end speed's great. Sure, if you have Raheem Mostert or Matt Breida speed, that would be lovely, but it's about getting to and through the hole. And if you do that, you will have a lot of yards. Hey, JC, yeah, buddy. I went to high school with this guy. What a small world, man.
Nice. Yeah, well, JC, thanks for joining the chat. And people want to join the chat, you can, if you have a great question here, we'll throw it up for Kyle before the end of the live stream. Really interesting running back. And I thought the part of the article I really liked is when Krueg points out that he finishes his runs with power. And that's what you love to see. And that makes me think, it's funny, Ty Davis Price walked by me at the minicamp, and he wasn't limping, but he was also not practicing. And I don't know if there was an injury there, if it was a rest thing, or if it was just something nagging, or they're just precautionary. There's not a lot of urgency to OTAs, nor should there be. But the bottom line is you're going to need all these backs. You're going to need all of them. You point out in the article that, Trey Sermon was tentative last year and indecisive at times. And there's just no question about that. I was looking for him to play a little faster in minicamp than than or move a little faster, and I didn't see that necessarily. I mean, he still has real nice feet. He's got good pick and slide, but I guess we're going to have to wait until they actually put on the pads to really evaluate the running backs. But they've got a deep core, Kyle, and that's the best thing. They got a dynamic guy now in Davis Price, who potentially can run between the tackles and maybe even deliver a little punishment.
Let's talk about Trey Sermon. What's an ideal role for him in 2022? So if you're drafted in the third round and the team trades up to draft you, there should be expectations, like no matter what. But the very next year, when the team drafts that same position in that same round, it probably means you're on the hot seat already. So, like, what do you think they're expecting from Sermon in year two?
It's really hard to say. I would say that, Kyle likes to use a lot of backs. So, but I mean, how many running backs are going to get on the field? And you got Juszczyk, he's going to be on the field. So it's going to be a very, very competitive situation. But I like Sermon. I think he's a volume guy, and he's got great feel, and he's a rhythm runner. So I don't know that it's a guy that you want to necessarily be like one carry off the field. I'd like to see him maybe for a series or a quarter where he can get a little rhythm, because he is a rhythm back. I think he's also going to be best used when you have a lead in the second half and you're looking to kind of slash and play the angles and just try to run for a first down maybe in the third or fourth quarter with the lead. I think he can help you there. I think he can help you a little bit as a receiver. He's a big guy with good hands. So, I mean, I like Trey Sermon, but I think Ty Davis Price is probably a little bit more dynamic, and I think that Elijah Mitchell's probably a little bit more consistent.
So when you mention receiver, that feels like his best angle, right? Like that feels like the way that he can best maximize his role. So it's pretty clear that they don't trust Elijah Mitchell out of the backfield. He would have had more opportunities last year, I feel like, if that were the case. And like, who knows what you're getting from TDP? He's a rookie. He's probably going to be the best pass protector out of the backfield. You need somebody to create out of the backfield. And Sermon, I remember interviewing his college coach, his running backs coach last year, and he said, like, we had plays drawn up for him out of the backfield to get him one-on-one with linebackers and safety. So they had a role for him in college. We didn't get a chance to see that last year, obviously, but Trey Sermon's probably comfortable catching the ball over his shoulder, and just doing receiver things. So with that in mind, I would imagine, like, if there is a role, if there is a spot for Sermon on this team, it's out of the backfield. And to be fair, like, there's not really a guy that, you would pinpoint for on the 49ers right now. Like, that can be a guy who could lead the team in receiving out of the backfield.
I'll say, don't forget, don't sleep on the name Jordan Mason. I know people are saying, what? Who? Sleep on him. I never even heard of him. Jordan Mason played at G-Tech, and he's like 220 pounds, and he looked really good on the practice field. And if you hit the YouTube highlights and you watch this guy, he's very compact built, power runner. They've got a great eye for talent in certain spots, Kyle. There's just no question. And running back is one of those spots. I mean, look how deep this room is. They let Mostert go. We got Jeff Wilson, and you got Mitchell, and you got Sermon. Now you got Davis Price, and then you've got this kid, really impressive, Jordan Mason. So remember that name in camp. I'll tell you, I was down there. The thing that really kind of opened my eyes is how many more receivers they have this year. Marcus Johnson looks like a receiver who can get deep. Ray McLeod looked impressive. Even Keyshawn Johnson flashed. Tay Martin flashed. So, I mean, they've got, and then obviously we know they've got Debo and Juwan Jennings and Ayuk. I mean, Danny Gray. Those guys are going to be for sure there, but that's a deep group of receivers suddenly.
That speed tells you what they have planned, right? It tells you they're going to uncork, they're going to open up the offense, and they're going to let it fly all over the field. That's pretty exciting to think about. You go from, and obviously he's still on the roster, but big-bodied guys like Juwan Jennings or Mohamed Sanu last year, where it's going to be contested, it's going to be over the middle, it's going to be short crossing, and now it's like 4-3, 4-4, 4-3, like all these guys who essentially are track dudes who Trey Lance is just going to be able to play action shot, hit them down the field. So I think there's going to be a lot more variance on the offense this year, but I'm looking forward to that. Like, I prefer that, if anything, where sure, it might not be as efficient, but to be honest, last year, how efficient were they on offense? It seemed like they left a lot of meat on the bone when it didn't come to Debo bailing them out. So with that in mind, man, the big plays will be plenty with Trey Lance under center, I imagine.
Kyle, the question of the week is, I guess, who's going to be the center? Scott Alexander says, I'm watching from Edinburgh, Scotland. Awesome, Scott. Good to have you. Thanks for joining us on the Krueg Show. This is the Niners Nation edition. He's Kyle Posey. I'm Larry Krueger. The center position, Alex Mack made it official. He's retiring. So what do you think? I'll say this, at the mini camp, I stood right behind the offensive line drills and wanted to get a real good feel for how those guys are moving around. And Spencer Burford, Jason Poe, the kid from Mercer, Nick Zakelj, all looked really, really good. I mean, I thought they looked like, young, promising prospects. Maybe Zakelj looked the best of all of them, to be honest. But what do you think? How do you see the center competition unfolding this summer? It seems like it could be a key battle.
Oh, it's going to be a fun battle. And I think the good news is the best player is going to win that job. Like, they're going to give all of these guys an opportunity to win it. But I don't think Kyle Shanahan's going to sleep at night knowing that there's no experience for his first year starting center. So with that in mind, I think it's going to be Daniel Brunskill. I think he's going to move to center. We're already seeing, Jalen Moore and Aaron Banks hold down the guard position. So you have Brunskill, you have Drake Brindle, and you have all the guys that you just mentioned. It seems like they're quietly high on Brindle, but whenever they talk about Brunskill, they talk about his versatility, they talk about his availability, and they talk about, just his head being in the right spot. And when you're a center in Kyle Shanahan's offense, you have to make all the calls up front. And it seems like, he's played over 500 snaps at center in the NFL, which matters, right? Like, he has roughly like 8.5 games, 9 games of starting experience at center. That is 8.5, 9 games more than anybody else that they would potentially trot out there. So I think that matters. And I think the familiarity, continuity with Brunskill, knowing that, he's going to be available. So all of that, I think that gives him a leg up, and I think he's going to be the starter.
Aaron Banks came out and talked to the media after practice, and, he's repositioned his body. He's lost some fat. He's put on some muscle. He's basically weighs the same, but he essentially is just a better, stronger athlete after a year in an NFL system, which makes sense. That I would say that's what almost the expectation would be, but they're feeling comfortable about maybe plugging him in at left guard. And I'll say this, the big question with the 49ers outside of Trey Lance on the offense, I think, is the center of the offensive line. And it could be anything. It could be anything from, it's a glaring hole to, it's a strength of the football team. Banks is a big human being. He is a wide, he's probably one of their biggest offensive linemen for sure. And then you've got, center, if it's Brunskill, and then at right guard, maybe it's Jalen Moore, maybe it's one of these young players. Zakel's really, really aggressive. I could see him being a guy who plays guard if they moved Brunskill to center. If it wasn't Jalen Moore, if they wanted to keep Moore, maybe Moore has to play right tackle for McGlinchey. We'll see how it all shakes out. But their O-line, they got Trent Williams and a lot of question marks and a really good coach in Chris Forster. It's going to be really interesting to see how it comes together, and hopefully it comes together quickly, because that O-line could be anything from where I'm looking at it.
It could be very good. It could be better than last year, because they weren't that good last year. But at the same time, it can be a little bit of a disaster. And we're talking about, so if it is Brunskill, we're talking about we'll call them second-year players, but they didn't play last year. So in Moore and Banks, effectively rookies. So you have essentially 3 first-year players all in front of your first-year starting quarterback. Kyle Shanahan is not going to sleep at night when you have that. And, it could be – the difference is, like, between having an Alex Mack and a guy that we haven't talked about yet, J.C. Tretter, who everybody is linking to the 49ers. Like, when you have these veteran guys, they've seen it all. They've seen the looks. They've seen the disguises. They know which guy is going to blitz and whatnot. For these younger guys, it's not going to be that easy. And the last thing you want is for Trey Lance to have to second guess who's coming, for him to think that I have more on my plate because I don't trust the guys in front of me. So that's a little scary to think about, but they'll be able to work this out. They're going to go against a pretty good defensive line in training camp that'll, I imagine, will make the offensive line grow pretty fast. So who do you think is going to be the weak link when it's all said and done on the offensive line?
Well, I'm pretty sure it won't be Trent Williams. Pretty sure.
He's
say
decent.
He's good. He's good. And it's funny when the other O linemen talk about Trent Williams. I mean, it's just like he's the best. He's the best in the league. There's just no question. That's how much respect there is in the room for Trent Williams. I don't know. It's like I've doubted Brunskill in the past, but man, I mean, he's really risen to the occasion on more than one occasion. I kind of wonder if, when we always kind of gloss over Colton McKivitz, it just seems like McKivitz is a pretty good offensive lineman, and that maybe he'll have a role. But I would say the center position is the big question mark. And I'm really eager to see if Poe or Zakelj, I'll tell you the guy who's really impressive is Spencer Burford, but he's not ready. Like, he's not ready to play right now, but he is impressive. He really is. I mean, long arms, really physical, pretty quick. I mean, he's a pretty awesome athlete at that size. I'm eager to see how fast he can come along. Jason Poe is really, really strong at the point. He's just short. But man, he moves people, and that maybe he's a leverage guy. Maybe you can play him at center, and maybe he'll be a revelation. And Zakelj is tough. You can tell. Zakelj throws those hands, and he really, he's physical. He's really physical, and he's mostly very, very, very bright, smart, academic, All-American type player. So I don't know which of those rookies is going to step in, but I'll say this: they all kind of showed something in this camp. I guess I'd be most concerned about the center spot.
Well, you talk about certain guys not being ready. They might not have a choice, right? Like, they might have to play and grow up on the fly, which again is kind of terrifying to think, because Trey Lance is going to have to do that too. Aaron Banks is going to have to do that too. Jalen Moore is going to have to do that too. So we're talking about your interior offense, the core right down the middle. All of those guys are going to have to grow up on the fly, and it'll probably turn out for the better in the long run. But is that a reason to maybe temper expectations this season, knowing everything? Like, there's so much youth.
I thought if you said what was the overwhelming theme of minicamp, to me it's Hufanga. I mean, we need to stop worrying about safety. I think they've got safety covered with Hufanga. Yeah, I mean, I think Hufanga is looking better and better and better. And when you watch him, he just looks a little quicker. He looks about a half step faster, and he already was playing at a really high level at the end of last year. So he's just a guy who's settling in. He loves the process. He lives it. And they got tremendous confidence in him. D'Amico spoke glowingly of him. And then when you watch him on the field, he plays with confidence. I mean, moves with confidence. And Jimmy Ward, by the way, is just in absolutely incredible shape. Looks like he could play like Sunday. So those two guys, I think, we talk so much about safety, but I could see safety and overall that secondary with the addition of Charvarius Ward. I could see the secondary being, maybe the strength of the defense. It could pivot a little bit from the defensive line to the defensive backfield.
So safety coach Daniel Bullocks, he mentioned Hufanga, and it's not just offseason talk when you said it. He said that he looks faster and he looks twitchier. And D'Amico Ryans was talking about his approach and how it's consistent and how that sets him apart from everybody else. And when you have a young player like Hufanga and he's asking questions in meetings and, overnight now he's a guy who all of a sudden he's, the communicator on the field, like, that means a lot. And if you could tell just by the way that D'Amico was talking about him, talking about Hufanga, that this guy wants to be better. He wants to be the guy. And everybody knows, he trains with Troy Polamalu. So he has that going for him. But if he's going to produce on the field and he's putting in an effort off the field, then I agree that, if that's how he's going to prepare, then the 49ers are in good hands. The way that I was looking at it is, I actually don't think safety would be a big deal, even if he was just slightly competent, because there are so many other good players around him. I think this is going to be the first year in a long time where the 49ers have above average cornerback play, which couldn't be further from the truth a season ago.
It's interesting because the defensive backfield is, the one thing, there's not a lot you can glean from minicamp, right? Because you're a month away from camp. They're shaking off the rust. They're
Half the starters aren't there.
half the starters aren't there. They're meeting the coaches. There's a bunch of new coaches. So especially on the offensive side. So you're kind of trying, it's an introduction. It's the first time you're seeing your rookies and your veterans blended together. You're kind of taking inventory on what you got going to camp. You're figuring out, do you need something more? You're kind of just trying to piece the whole thing together. And you're just looking, I think I'm just looking for guys who stand out, guys who are bouncing around, guys that are in great shape, guys that are playing with all kinds of, speed and energy. And the guys that stood out to me were Quantrez Knight, the cornerback from UCLA, Samuel Womack, the corner from Toledo, and to a little bit lesser degree to Tariq Castro Fields. All three of those guys, I mean, Womack and Knight are really, there's a lot of confidence there. I mean, if I don't know if you've interviewed Womack, but you can see his confidence on the field. He moves like a guy who knows, you know what, I'm pretty damn good. And Quantrez Knight is another guy. You if you watched him, you would say third, fourth round pick, and they got him after the draft. So I'm sure he lacks something, probably a little speed, stop for the stopwatch. But those three guys really all stood out to me. And with the addition of Charvarius Ward, the improvement of Hufanga, some young additions on the perimeter, I mean, the defensive backfield's quite a bit deeper.
And the defensive backfield, they don't have to be this elite tier because Nick Bosa, because Eric Armstead, because of the pass rush that they have. But I want to talk Womack, and I haven't interviewed him yet. I do want to reach out to him. You don't have that type of production on the ball in college without being confident. Like, you don't have that type of production without kind of knowing what's coming. So when you saw him, was he primarily lining up on the outside? Was he inside in the slot, or where was he at?
Womack looked like he was inside. Interestingly enough, we had speculated, I think last time you and I, or maybe it was a couple times ago, that maybe Emmanuel Mosley would play inside, and Mosley stayed outside. So they kept Mosley outside. Ambry was outside as well, and they had Womack, I think, inside. But he is small, but man, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's really, really athletic. He moves really naturally, really explosive movements, and just has that kind of strut out there. Like, hey, man, when you can show up on an NFL field as a first timer and you're still kind of strutting around, it's like, wow, that's a whole nother level of athletes. And then if you still look like the most athletic guy, that's saying something.
Let me ask you this. It's June, and I know there's not a lot to glean from in OTAs, and we probably haven't seen real football. Like, they're not wearing pads. But hypothetically, who plays more snaps for the 49ers in 2022? Samuel Mack or Ambry Thomas?
I would say it's probably still Thomas, but I think they're both going to be key cogs. I really do, because Thomas also looks better. He looks better than he did at the end of last year, and that's a great thing to see, because some of these guys, as long as the arrows keep pointing up, you're doing fine. It's just when you start making the same mistakes over and over again. So I thought Ambry Thomas looked like a fish out of water in camp last year, and then early in the year he just looked like very tentative. And then he got a little better. By the end of the year, I think you could make an argument he was their best cover man.
Yeah, I think in camp last year, Thomas looked like he should have been undrafted. Like, he looked like he had no confidence. He didn't know what was coming. Even though he timed well, like he ran fast, he didn't really play fast. And then toward the end of the year, he kind of stopped thinking so much. I think just started playing football, and that was good to see. So, yeah, I'm interested to see all these guys taking the next step. With that said, all the cornerbacks you named, is Deommodore Lenoir going to make the roster?
We didn't even mention Jason Verrett.
Right.
And Darqueze Dennard.
They like because he's a veteran.
Yeah, they do like him. And D'Amico talked about him as well. Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. Most teams, you got to have 5 good corners. There have been years where the Niners have had a hard time finding 5 good corners. They're going to show up in camp this year with 10.
Yeah, it's so different from last year.
Very, very different. Very different. I'll tell you the other thing that the 49ers are doing well right now, Kyle, that's incredible. It's like it's uncanny. they're finding linebackers that are smaller and faster and yet still can play. Like there were 2 linebackers that I saw in this camp, Marcelino Mccrary Ball, who played, 6 feet, 215 pounds. So he's small, right? I mean, he's a safety size linebacker, but man, I mean, he really moves athletically, and you can see he's a nice looking player against the run even, and he can move. And then the other guy from San Diego State, Saguna Luby, is a tremendous athlete. And I don't know how good of a player he's going to be. We'll find out, this summer when they go for real. But I mean, another guy looks like a really athletic, strong safety or athletic free safety. He's a linebacker. So we're seeing kind of the evolution of the game to smaller, faster athletes who can break down in space against athletic receivers and bring those guys to the ground sometimes, many times in an, open field one-on-one situation. So that's the productive, neck roll 4-7 guy. That guy's like, he's selling insurance, and now he's been replaced by a guy who's maybe 210, 215, but flies all over the place and makes incredible plays in space.
So D'Amico Ryans called those 2 out. He also called out Jeremiah Jimmel. And he said, before talking about their athleticism, before talking about their physicality, he mentioned how smart they were. And a lot like Hufanga, when you can see what's happening, when you can diagnose, you play even faster. So it kind of makes your 40-time obsolete. So knowing that they're already athletic, knowing that they can learn from, Fred Warner every day, like they're watching – you know how much of a luxury it is to be able to take mental reps from Fred freaking Warner?
Look at that core. Core was Aziz was on the side practicing, but you got Aziz, you got Greenlaw, you got Warner. All 3 of those guys are great. I mean, they're, I hate to have the Tony the Tiger take on that, but they're all great. I mean, seriously, those guys are all terrific. And none of these guys are really going to play. But I mean, I'll say this, I bet you anything, the Niners will do the same thing this year that they did last year, and they'll wind up trading a linebacker for like a day 3 pick like they did last year with the kid they sent to Denver. Because that's, they got too many guys, and they're too many NFL linebackers in their camp.
Jonas Griffith last year, and he started for the Broncos, by the way. It's not like he was just a giveaway or like the Broncos didn't want him. He played a lot for the Broncos. So
yeah, he was good.
Quietly, I think that guy could be Dre Greenlaw. I would make an argument that Azeez Al-Shaair was one of the 10 best linebackers in the NFL last year. And he kind of got thrown into the fire, but he was phenomenal. Both Azeez and Dre Greenlaw are on the final years of their deal. If the 49ers were to trade, release, move on from Trey Greenlaw, whatever it is, and we know that they're up against the cap, they could save $2.5 million. So knowing that he might not be a part of my future plans, knowing that he has been banged up, he missed the majority last year, only started 3 games, and his replacement Azeez was better in a lot of metrics. I think Greenlaw might be the odd man out. And I mean, they signed Oren Burks. You mentioned those 3 linebackers who these kids, just throw them on the field on special teams, right? They can all run. I would not be surprised if Greenlaw is the odd man out. What do you think about that?
Oh God, I hate that idea. I hate that. I know you're not endorsing it. You're just kind of reading the tea leaves. I just love Greenlaw, man. I think Greenlaw is like an all-pro kind of a player if he's healthy. So that's the thing. I mean, and it's amazing. Some years it seems like you can't find linebackers. I can remember when the Niners, it wasn't that long ago, where, Trent Baalke is leaning on Gerald Hodges and guys who they're pulling off the street, and they're trying to fill with just guys. And now they've got just an abundance of riches at linebackers. So I guess you may have to move one of those guys, man. I'm glad that I don't have to make that call, because I think Greenlaw is so fast, so instinctive. He has a hard time staying healthy, but man, he just flies around and makes plays, and he breaks down in space against athletic running backs, and he does it. Makes it look routine. So he's really good. In some ways, he breaks down the purest of the 3, but Aziz is fast and physical and hard hitting, and then Warner's probably the most trustworthy of the group. He makes the fewest mistakes, and he's really fast. So it's a tremendous group. And now they've got Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, and the kid from Carolina you mentioned, Gemmel. They called him the General. I mean, he made a ton of tackles at Carolina. So it's going to be, I think, linebacker is going to be a fun spot to watch this summer because the Niners have an abundance of riches as far as athletic linebackers who can run and hit, and that's always fun to watch. Give me your one thought on Trey Lance before we go, because Trey is always, everybody's talking about Trey this, Trey that. Do you have a weekly thought on Trey?
I mean, it's nice to hear people who actually see him play talk about him, as opposed to people on the outside just guessing from second, third, fourth hand information. So it seems like, just by taking away what D'Amico Ryan says, he said that he's kind of taking the team by storm as far as the leadership goes. So that's what you want to hear, right? You want to hear those things where he's not just kind of sitting back. And I mean, you can see on social media, he's just comfortable with himself. And I think that is probably my biggest takeaway, that he's growing, he's evolving, he's getting out of his shell. And when other players see that, it's going to build confidence. So as long as he's comfortable with himself, which he is, you could tell, I think the 49ers are in good hands. I'm ready to see him throw the football against other teams in pads. And I know we still have a long way to get from there, but I just think the sky's the limit for this guy, man. I don't think people understand how talented he is.
He's got the play caller, he's got the weapons, he's got the talent. And it's on this summer, and it's going to be fun to watch. Hey, Kyle, great stuff as usual, man. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you. Can't wait, man. Take care. Have a good weekend.
You too. Kyle Posey from Niners Nation stopping by on the Krueg Show. Always one of the great segments of the week. And check out Kyle and Niners Nation. They do a phenomenal job breaking down the 49ers.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah. We ain't never fall back. Hold our ground where we at.